Donna Franceschild, welcome to Heidelberg. Thank you for agreeing to be interviewed during the 2011 EMBO Science and Society Conference. Today at the conference you spoke about your experience of living with bipolar disorder. How can you best describe what bipolar disorder is?
I'm bipolar 2, so the manic episodes that I have are, you talk real fast, you talk real loud, you become self-obsessed. I'm not proud of it. Not ashamed, but I'm not proud of it. That you can be very reckless about your personal safety, reckless sexually. There are, and have feelings about your own power, your own ability to, do whatever you want to do. And depression, I think people are more familiar with what depression feels like. But certainly there have been times in my life where the only thing I could make myself do was get my kid to school.
You talked in your speech about bipolar being a seamless part of your narrative. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
I think the point is that in my talk I kind of threw out a whole shopping list of things that have happened to me during my life that are important things that I really remember, that are part of my current narrative. And by narrative in this context I mean we all carry around a story of our own lives, everybody does, and which kind of gives things their meaning, kind of tells us who we are. Somebody said, did you find Mexican cooking part of your therapy? And it was like, no, I threw that in because these are things that I've done in my life that are important to me and that are just as much part of my narrative as the other things that I have, other events or things that have happened or feelings that I've had that have been during what would be termed an episode.
As someone who lives with bipolar disorder, could you tell us what kind of stereotypes people with mental illness face?
I think stigma has got better. I think, for example, I wrote this thing called Taking Over the Asylum, which was the first drama that was on British television that put patients at the center of it. What I didn't realize, I suppose, was that we were stigma busting. We were saying, that people with mental health problems were totally three-dimensional characters. That had very complex lives, complex feelings that were much more than their diagnosis. And at the time, the soap operas in Britain were showing, like character who had a mental health problem, who was a serial killer, or, who had erotomania, and it was stalking, one of the character's husbands. And they were always shown as like, these crazy people. And I think things have got moved on. The soaps are much better, and in many areas of the media, they're much better at doing it. But there's still a really long way to go, and I don't think that just because celebrities come out and say, oh, I'm bipolar. I think that was really important when it first happened. I think what's happened now is that, oh, it's okay to be a celebrity and bipolar, and actually it makes you more exotic, and actually, we're all so creative. That's why we've got bipolar, because we're just, being a creative is just so hard on our brains. And I think it can be counterproductive because, and I'm just going to give you an example, as somebody that I know who suffers from mental health problems, living with her mom, and she went to watch the Stephen Fry documentary with her mom. And her mom said, well, you know, Stephen Fry's really successful and he's not even on any medication, and according to his program, he's on the high end of bipolar, and you know, he copes very well, you know, so, you know, what's wrong with you? And I think that's really hard.
As a mental health activist, you're in touch with a lot of people with mental illness. How do they respond to the ongoing discoveries in neuroscience? And do you think the developments change the way people perceive their illness?
I think there is, among people I know, a mild distrust about whether we're going to go too far in the direction of, if only we could find the gene that makes people vulnerable to bipolar, then, you know, these babies can be aborted, which is the logical conclusion of that. These babies can be aborted, and therefore, you know, we can wipe out bipolar disorder, which makes me crazy, really, because even among people who have inherited a possible predisposition to bipolar disorder, there is still, you know, a small chance that they're actually going to develop full-blown bipolar disorder. And also, I think it's natural, if you are experiencing it, you're not thinking about what's happening. And in a way, those of us who aren't scientists have an almost spiritual way of looking at it. You know, we believe that it's happening to who we are. It's not a separate thing with us. So it's totally anti-scientific. I'm not saying this is a particularly healthy attitude, but I think there is a resistance to the idea of what's happening to me, which feels very personal to me, being reduced to some gene markers, or you know, some genes that I was unlucky enough to inherit.
One of the things that seems to be coming out of the conference is a feeling that there's a need for balance between acknowledging people's experiences and also continuing the research.
Yeah, I think so. I was particularly impressed by Nicholas Ross's keynote speech, and the bit about the importance of the patient being the center of the equation, and particularly, you know, the quote said, "Nothing about us without us." And I think that's incredibly important. I feel that I'm very lucky to have what I think of as gold standard psychiatric care, which you know, loads and loads of people don't have. And when I go in and talk to my psychiatrist, I always feel like we're collaborating. And I think that's the way it should be. And I feel empowered by that. I feel like, okay, I am actively involved in managing my own illness. I'm actively involved in talking about medication. I think that's absolutely the way it should be. You know, I don't know.
It's the way it should be for everybody.
Yes, it's the way it should be for everybody. And hopefully this conference takes a step toward doing that.
As a mental health activist yourself, how important is it to you that your voice is being heard?
I was delighted, scared, but delighted when I was invited to speak here. And at first I said, I'm really flattered to be asked, but I really don't think I have anything to say. Because I looked at she gave me a draft program, and I thought, these people are scientists, and you know, I'm a writer, and you know. But she said, no, I think it's important that there is a patient voice in this. And I thought, okay, that makes sense, I guess. And you know, and looking back on it, having finally got through this terrifying experience of talking to scientists about mental health, I do feel like, yeah, I'm glad there was someone here, not necessarily me, but that there was, that the conference thought it was important to bring someone here who, you know, was at the sharp end of all of this.
Well, Donna, it's been an honor for us to hear your voice, hear your story, and to have you here in Heidelberg.